It's a common experience I have at Subway where, when ordering that particular sub, of course, there are a number of selections to be made. And many times it's been my experience that the Subway worker, the sandwich artist, I believe that they are referred to as, the sandwich artist will ask your selections for the sub. Well, my selections are pretty extensive. I'm a pretty simple eater typically when it comes to, let's say, a cold cut combo, I am going to load up that cold cut combo with a number of items, 7 or 8 items. Okay. What I typically encounter at the Subway is that the sandwich artist wants me to run down the complete list of items that I want on my sub, but they're incapable of remembering all those items. So what happens is they say, what would you like on your sub? And I say, lettuce and tomato. Then they say, what else? What else? And they're not even close to finishing the lettuce and tomato application on the sub. And they're saying, what else? What else? And pickles and cucumbers. And oh, okay, what else? And they're still 3 or 4 steps behind. And they continue to ask me what else I want on my sub. And they said, give me everything that you'd like on the sub. And so I proceed to do that, but it never fails that they're incapable of remembering all those items. So they're going to go ahead and ask me those items anyway. And if this is the biggest problem I have in life today, then we're in good shape. All right. Welcome into the Voice of College Football on a Monday night at 6 o'clock Eastern Time. I'm pretty accustomed to calling it night because for the past, it seems like 6 years, but it's been more like 4 months. It's been pitch black here in Connecticut at 6 o'clock in the evening, and now it's bright and sunny and so nice to have a nice blue sky and sunshine at 6 o'clock in the afternoon. It is afternoon. It's not night. It should not ever be referred to as 6 o'clock at night. All right. So welcome into the Voice of College Football. We've got the phone lines open at 860-499-3332. 3332. I don't know that I could have selected a better set of numbers to roll off the tongue than 3332. 860-499-3332. Before we get to the phone lines and before we post the phone lines on the ticker at the bottom of the screen, that means when I go ahead and post the number at the bottom of the screen on the ticker, then we're going to have to remove the daily and nightly reminder to shop on Amazon. Not just to shop on Amazon, but the key portion of that is to use the link in the description section of any of the videos, including this one. I actually see, this is the deal. The default upload on any of my videos is to include the Amazon link in the description section. However, when we do live streams, that is typically blank, that description section during the live stream. I even went to the toils today, just a few minutes ago, of copying and pasting the Amazon link to the description section of this live stream so it would be that easy for you to grab the Amazon link. What I should have done is grab that Amazon link and put it in the chat, but I'm only so smart. I will hopefully think to do that maybe sometime in the next 5 years. We take this on in stages. So welcome into the Voice of College Football. And I didn't know what I was going to talk about today. Not that I need to think of something in particular to talk about each and every day, because you guys are ultimately the producers of this show. The producer of the Voice of College Football call-in shows is all of you. You are the producers, because ultimately what you say in the live chat, if it's worthwhile, insightful, amusing, any of the above, is going to make it to air and is going to be repeated by me and responded to in some fashion. Also, of course, the phone calls. So you produce the show. So whatever you want to talk about, under the guise of college football. Let's underline that because I see the first call coming in. So I would have to say under the guise of college football. So that has to be emphasized to certain people out there. College football. Basically, the topic matter of our shows. If you want a clue or a hint into what we typically discuss here, the voice of college football. That's your clue. That's your hint. The voice of college football. So we tend to talk football around here most of the time. Most of the time. When we're not talking NHL or international soccer, we tend to default to college football. All right. Hopefully my screen comes back or I'm not going to be taking any calls. Again, it's the Amazon link in the description section. Now we'll get the number to the screen. And there we go. And you may have seen the title to the show. So I was in the middle of explaining this, that I didn't have anything to talk about today in particular, just to take your calls. And then I had seen on Twitter a tweet by Mr. Phil Steele, one of the very best in the business, just most respected. I've had him on here 3 times. He's been extremely gracious to me. I've spoken with him at ESPN a few times. And again, he's been on our show 3 times, which he certainly doesn't need to do. We hope to have him back. I let him and allow him to get past his season of publishing, which is a marathon and a sprint all wrapped up into one. Because between the end of the collegiate football season and summertime, when he finally publishes and releases that magazine, he is going full throttle. So I leave him alone until summertime, and then I will knock on Phil Steele's door, and hopefully we'll have him back for a 4th time here at the Voice of College Football. But I noticed a tweet by Phil Steele just outlining some of his benchmarks in producing his periodical. And I thought, well, we'll have him back again this summer. That'll be great. And then I also thought, this guy is just relentless. He's a professional. He's so kind, just a great guy, and at the top of the industry. And so I thought, you know what? I don't have a topic for tonight. So it might be interesting as I made my way down Phil Steele's Twitter feed, that's going to be the topic of the show tonight. We are just going to go down Phil Steele's Twitter feed, because most of those selections are pretty crazy. Pretty crazy. I'm getting a phone call from Chicago. So those fine people in Chicago, leave me alone for the next 2 hours. We've got college football to talk about. All right, so let's take that out. All right. Phil Steele, yes. In just going through a couple tweets, I thought this is going to be right down our alley at the Voice of College Football, because this guy is just crazy good, just full throttle college football all the time. And these are the kind of tweets that nerds like us will get into. So we will take a look at Phil Steele's Twitter feed after we take our first call of the night. I expect it to be an insightful one. We've got Dominic on the line. Welcome to the Voice of College Football, Dominic.
Hey, Mark. How you doing this fine Monday afternoon?
I am doing great. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. So, guess what's going on at 9:20 p.m. Eastern time tonight?
9:20. If it has anything to do with anything other than college football, I have been watching Major League Baseball the last few days, and I'm always curious about the NFL. But anything other than that, I think I failed to mention we've got a new rule on the show. So anybody who mentions anything outside of college football, unless I have started us down that path, they immediately get hung up on.
Well, I know I talked about a couple March Madness games, but we got the men's national title game.
Dominic, I did not hear the last few things out of your mouth, but if they're anything close to what I think they are, then you may hear a click. So one more time, Dominic.
Okay, here we go. We got the March Madness.
That's what I thought I heard. Yeah. All right. So caller number one, a bust on the night. There we go. All right. Again, 860-499-3332. Maybe I'm just in a bit of a testy mood because I've dealt with too many morons recently. All right, let's jump in the live chat and see what you folks have to say. And then we're going to look at Phil Steele's Twitter feed. Because for a college football junkie, he again is one of the very best. And I was checking out his Twitter feed, and it's a thing of beauty for the college football geek. All right. We've got Dominic testing for COVID. Too much information. That's kind of a classic thought there. All right. Mike 3883, let's go. Dennis, good to see you as well. The Rod Farva, good to see the Texas Rangers playing in a stadium at full capacity. That is good news for all of us. That is good news for all of us. My son and I went to church yesterday for the first time in about a year. So we did not show up at church because it was Easter. That's not my belief system that you show up for church on Easter, because if you're just showing up on Easter, then you probably don't much care about your faith in particular. So why even show up for Easter? It's just kind of tradition or some type of ritual at that point. Anyway, I'll keep my spiritual thoughts to myself for right now. But my son and I, we went to church yesterday and attended a church that we had not attended before. And he let me know, Dad, if I go up to the door and they require me to wear a mask, I'm turning around and leaving. And since he suggested to go to this church and really wanted to go to church on Easter Sunday, or he just wanted to go to church in particular because he had made the statement a few weeks ago, we need to get back going to church. And I said, absolutely. And so I told him, I said, okay, just be prepared to know where you'd like to go to breakfast, because I'm not going to church by myself. So if you're not going to go in, I'm not going in. And certainly for those of you who are unaware, my son's 24 years old. So had he been like 14, I'm then telling him what to do. But as it stands right now, of course, he can act as he so chooses. So fortunately for him, fortunately for us, as is being responded to by the Rod Farva, that we entered church and nobody was wearing masks and everybody was fine. All right. Brian W., I used to live at Subway. I was about to make a derogatory comment towards Subway, but I venture there way too often to make any kind of derogatory comments about Subway. But it's kind of a default type choice. D-Rock, good to see you. Good evening, Mark and everyone. Mr. HD, good to see you as well. I certainly hope that everyone who's ailing, whether that be from COVID or something else, is feeling much better. It's quite the cross to bear, the Rod Farva. Yes. I just thought I would share my Subway experience, because this has been about 107 times, if it's been once. But it's certainly not any great trial or tribulation I have to endure. Reasonable Gump. Yes. You were ahead of me on that one. Rod Farva. Oh, yes. We'll have to do that another time. In terms of Reasonable Gump saying, Mark, I thought we were able to vote for you to either make fun of them or hang up. Yes. And I very much more enjoy making fun of the individual than hanging up. Maybe that doesn't say a whole lot for my character. So we all have character flaws. That would be one of mine. I just find it amusing when it's restated over and over and over again. And it's just it's a bit puzzling to me, and then it's also a bit ludicrous and amusing when not just on the topic of other sports, because hey, do I break my own rule? Yeah, I do. Once in a while, we'll talk baseball here for 10 or 20 seconds. And certainly the NFL has a tie to college football. So we'll kick it around with the NFL a little bit. And actually, NFL fans, I do have a treat for you, NFL fans. I'm not going to disclose this tonight, but I'm just letting you know. The voice of pro football, or what did I say? No, I'm not going to disclose it anytime soon here. All right. Welcome to the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hello?
Hello. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark. It's George in
It's
Portland.
George. It's been a while.
Not to be mistaken with George in Portland, Maine. I'm in Portland, Oregon.
Of course not. That's a long ways away.
Anyway, my friend Derek's here. He said, worst city in the world. Anyway, what's up with Phil Steele's Twitter feed?
I knew that would catch people's attention. There's nothing up with it. It's probably what it typically is every day. So I have no great knowledge of Phil Steele's Twitter feed other than I know the man to a certain extent. We're not buddies or anything, but he follows me. I follow him. Therefore, I see his Twitter feed, and sometimes it'll show up, and I probably haven't seen anything that he's tweeted in months and months and months, but I just happened to be preparing for the show, and I had no topic, and I came across Phil Steele tweeted something regarding his publication and how hard they're working, and then I looked at his Twitter feed, and I thought, there's my topic for tonight's show. It's Phil Steele's Twitter feed.
That's a good one. I like that.
We're gonna go through Phil Steele's Twitter feed, and maybe sometime soon here, George, we're gonna go through your Twitter feed.
Man, you know what? I have 0 videos on my YouTube channel right now, and I was watching Saturday Night Live the other day, and the name of the skit they did was called "Will You Take It?" And it was a black doctor, and his 4 cousins were the contestants. And he was asking, "Will you take it?" And he was saying, "I'll give you 5,000 to take it." And they were saying no. And he was going 10,000, 20,000. And the doctor's trying to explain to his cousins why they should take it. And I posted that little skit, and YouTube said it violated community bylines and copyright. Yeah, my one video with 200 subscribers, they sanctioned me.
Run this by me one more time, George. What did they ban?
I made a video that was like a 30-second clip of Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
Of this skit they did about a doctor asking his relatives if they'd take it, and they were all black. I mean, that's just the way it was. It was like a joke, a spoof, you know? And they're all going, "I ain't taking it. I wouldn't take it for 20,000 to given reasons, you know?"
So
and
you didn't.
I thought, how? Right.
So you didn't get taken down because you republished something that was copyrighted on air. You got flagged because of the content. You think?
I don't know.
Yeah.
When I told my friends to go there and look at it, and they says video was removed by user, and it was removed by user after I got the email from YouTube telling me I violated their community standards or something. God, one video. Yeah. Got to be careful, Mark. Don't say anything politically incorrect or even insinuate it.
Oh, I know. They could come after me at some point. We just never know.
I think the mantra of the day is Heil Hitler. You know, like whoever your governor or your leader is, like you better agree with them or else you're in trouble.
Yeah. Well,
no dissenting opinion will be allowed.
Let's even be careful with that statement.
I said it facetiously, but
I know you did.
I have some hope of future glory. Georgia is playing Clemson the first game of the year. I hope we make it.
I believe what we're going to do. There has been so much discussion and interest in that game, and I've received so many questions and comments about that game, is that as soon as Georgia's done with their spring practice, which is going to be in about 10 days, I'm going to bring on all the Clemson and Georgia people I can find that know what they're talking about, and we're going to just do a pregame 6 months in advance Georgia Clemson live stream.
It is so exciting. I've never seen such a 50-50 toss-up. What's the point spread on that? Is there a spread yet?
We're looking for a point spread on that game. Really?
What do you think it would be without even looking? What would you think?
I'm going to say they're playing in Charlotte, so there's no home field advantage. I'm going to say that Clemson's a 1 or 2 point favorite, I guess.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's just, I couldn't even handicap that game. I hope Clemson wins just so I can laugh at Georgia, see Uncle Lou crash and burn.
Well, who's going to have to handicap it is me.
Right. You're right. You're actually going to have to make your own mind up on this one. Whoa. I'm glad I'm not you. That's hard.
Well, we'll have to do it. I got to pull those people to Patreon for those tremendous predictions I make. I got to make people money.
I'd have to give the edge to Clemson. Like you say, even if it's a point or two, because they have a winning tradition. And Georgia has never won anything in the history of the world unless you're willing to go back to ancient times like 1980, you know?
Yeah, well, that's the knock on Georgia, and I get it. So anybody who doesn't like Georgia can certainly just pull out 1980.
Hey, don't say it doesn't matter about losing that winning tradition that they never really had in the first place, because ask Miami if it matters. And when they were on, they were on. And when they weren't, they weren't. Clemson's on. Clemson's always on. Georgia has never been on, except back in the ancient times. And that was only because of Herschel Walker.
You don't think that Georgia and Clemson are pretty comparable?
Yes, I'm saying the only distinguishing factor I can find between them is Georgia has Kirby Dumb, and the other team has some guy named Dabo that seems to get to the playoff finals every year. Kirby Smart was winning the national championship. All he had to do was hold on for like one play, and he managed to lose. I have a hard time voting for them. They should have won the title that year. You can't waste chances like that. There's no way Georgia's going to beat Clemson or run the table undefeated and win the national title. It's out of the question. They'll lose to South Carolina.
Yeah, they're good at that.
Man,
I
can't believe there's so many.
I love Georgia helmet before the season starts, I guess.
I don't really mind these mega teams like Oklahoma and Alabama and Georgia. They're still in the talk, because they got all 5 stars. I kind of like this superpower shit. There's enough teams. There's like 6 of them or 7 of them or 8 of them. Maybe Florida or Miami can sneak in,
I don't like
FSU if they got good again.
Don't like it.
You don't like it?
It's boring.
Well, that's why I told you we have to rotate the season and have 2 championships and figure that out, because it's not fair. There should be the big mega teams and then everybody else. This is like this is where we train pro football players. It's fair to have 8 or 9 or 10 of those teams. That's a pro camp, and then everybody else.
Yeah, we used to have a lot more.
You can't put New Mexico. You can't put New Mexico in with them, and it's just not fair. Even the Pac-12 can't barely compete.
When did we ever find out that the Pac-12 could not compete? When was this proven on the field?
I don't know. When's the last time they won anything?
George, here's the issue. You can't win anything if you're not allowed to participate. If you're not allowed to participate, you can't win. How can you win? How can you win the playoff if you don't get into the playoff?
I agree. That's why we need a second tier thing going on. We just have to.
We don't need second tier nothings. We need to expand the playoff to include all the conferences. See, everybody can agree that the Pac-12 is not that good, and I do as well. I understand that, but it's not been proven on the field. It's not been proven on the field. The Pac-12 has played
for the first time ever. For the first time ever, I'm going to change my mind and agree with you. Let's expand the playoffs. Let's make it 16.
Thank you. No. Not 6. I've explained this, George. You've been on these live streams way too many times to come up with that number.
We can't do the bye week. We can't do the bye week. You got to be 8 at least.
6 doesn't work. You've got to give buys.
I don't want 6.
8 works. 4, 8.
Right. There can
16.
be no 6.
Okay. Thank you. 8.
8, 16, 32, 64, 128. You have to double it because
absolutely.
There can't be no bye week.
All right, George. I'm going to run to some of these other calls.
Love you guys.
Appreciate it. Have a good one.
Go college football. See you, Mark.
All right. Our man, George, getting the job done. Now we move it on to Ohio State fan David Greenshield. David, how are we doing tonight?
Excellent. The man that gives college football its voice, Mark Rogers. Hi, and how are you, sir?
I am doing well. How's it going tonight?
Excellent. Just want to talk a little college football. We were talking about the Clemson-Georgia matchup coming into the season. We were talking about, Pickens, the star receiver for Georgia, getting hurt. A couple of things. Is there a chance that he can come back before the end of the season, or is he done for the season? I wonder if I misspoke when I said that.
So, the first thing I did when I read the news and produced whatever video I produced was I looked up the average time that it takes for an athlete to come back from that injury, and I was seeing 8 to 10 months projected, 6 months being the minimum. I guess Amari Rogers came back in about 6 months. So if you take 6 months from the end of March, then you're looking at just an October return. Probably something more realistic would be for him to come back the last 2 or 3 weeks of the season, of which then there is a thought that, is he going to come back to play 2 or 3 football games, or is he going to come back to rehab or he would have already rehabbed, of course, but to prepare for the NFL draft?
Okay. Yeah, because I wasn't sure whether I heard it maybe on Uncle Lou or another podcast that there was a possibility he could still return before the end of the season. And, obviously, with when it happened this time of year, obviously, gives him a chance. But you're probably right. It probably realistically would be maybe the last couple games of the season, I would think.
Yeah, that seems to be the a reasonable estimate. Yep.
Question about him, and I don't know if your Georgia people feel this way, but I was really impressed by him. And I know Georgia's not always had the greatest quarterback play, obviously, but do the Georgia people feel that he could be the best receiver they've had since A.J. Green?
Oh, wow. Well, I'm gonna say this. I'm gonna say this, understanding that young men are young men. He's been a knucklehead.
Okay.
He's been a knucklehead. I don't know if you're aware of some of the stupid things that he's done on and off the field. He's done a lot of stupid things. He's been a knucklehead.
I've not seen that, so I can't.
So so taking away for a second, so for example, he got a 15-yard penalty last year when there was a play that came out of bounds. I believe it was against Tennessee, and he dumped water on the individual for Tennessee when they ran out of bounds. Just dumped water on him. And that seems pretty harmless, and it is, but it's just stupid and idiotic, and he's got a history of doing those things. He's been it goes beyond that in regards to things that he's done that have been more egregious to hurt his standing on the team. I know he's been suspended
right
from the team.
I'd heard that.
But in terms of just sheer talent and receiving ability. So despite that stupidity, hopefully he's learning from that. And again, I tend to take it light on these student athletes because they're 19, 20 years old. Yeah, he has tremendous talent. I'm trying to think since AJ Green.
Yeah, I was trying to think of it, Mark, like all the receivers that have been sent to the NFL, because obviously they're known for the running back position. You know, that's their greatest player, of course, and they've had a really good run at running backs. But other than maybe Hardman, who's now with the Chiefs, and hasn't really done a whole lot since he's been there, I couldn't think of another top-flight receiver to come out of Georgia that's in the NFL since A.J. Green. Now, Georgia fans, correct me if I'm wrong, I remember Muhammad Massaquoi, he was there right around the time that I think A.J. Green was there. Or I play with my Browns, so that's why I remember him, never did much. But there weren't any other names that really stuck out. So that's why I was throwing that out there.
Oh, shoot. I'm trying to come up with... Man, I'm getting bad with names. Who was the receiver they had? This is about 2014 or 15. He's playing in the NFL right now. Oh my goodness, I can't remember his last name. Is it Bailey? Shoot, I can think of a group of them that went on to the NFL that that played. That were third and fourth receivers on teams, those kind of guys. Maybe the live chat's coming to our aid here. This is awful of me. This is stuff that frustrates me because, we're talking about guys that I've seen play like 20 times, but I just can't remember their names right now. I got too many names in my head. So if we go back to like 2015, let's see what we got here. We've got guys like, Terry Godwin. I wasn't thinking of him, but Malcolm Mitchell. That's who I was thinking of. Malcolm Mitchell is one guy in particular. Really, he's the only one from that team, in addition to Terry Godwin, that did anything in receiving. And I just went to a random year around 2015, 2014. See if they had anybody else of note. Michael Bennett, I vaguely remember him. Malcolm Mitchell, Chris Conley. That's what I was thinking of too. Chris Conley and Malcolm Mitchell. Okay. Those guys, they're playing in the NFL. And Conley did some decent things in the NFL.
I think they were on that one Georgia team. One of the two was on that Georgia team in 2012 that lost that heartbreaker to Alabama in the championship game, I think.
Yes. Absolutely.
The Gurley team.
Yeah, the Gurley, Keith Marshall team with Aaron Murray. That team was so good. Yep. They were great on defense.
Right.
Gurley ran for 17 touchdowns. Yes, absolutely. So between Keith Marshall and Todd Gurley, they ran for 2,100 yards and 26 touchdowns. All right. Malcolm Mitchell caught 48 that year. Tavares King caught 42. He played in the NFL. Marlon Brown. Arthur Lynch was a tight end. Chris Conley caught 20. So Conley and Mitchell, those were the two guys.
What?
Yeah, that defense.
Okay.
Bakari Rambo. Yeah, Damian Swan, as you mentioned, Jarvis Jones, Sean Williams. Did Sean Williams play for the Browns? He was with the Browns for a while, wasn't he?
I believe for a short period of time. I know they also had a good defensive tackle on that team. I think it was Jenkins.
Yes.
That was drafted
absolutely.
pretty high
Yeah,
if I'm
nice
not
job.
mistaken.
Jordan Jenkins.
Yeah, they were right. They were pretty loaded. I mean, that was a really good Rick team. Probably one of the 2 or 3 best Rick teams.
Yes.
Aside from those Stafford teams that he had that were pretty good too.
Ray Drew went to the NFL too. He was a good player.
Okay.
Yeah, just as we both know, they were loaded, and for them to play Alabama down to the last play at the 4-yard line and then see that Alabama team completely wipe out Notre Dame to the tune of 42-14, that doesn't even justify what really happened on the field. Yeah, that Georgia team could have won a national championship.
Right. That's what I said to Uncle Lou. I said one time, I said, you essentially lost 2 national championship games to Alabama, 2012 and 2017.
Yeah.
You know, because and unfortunately, the Buckeyes that year, of course, we pick a year to be on probation when we go undefeated. So, and, you know, again, if the Buckeyes would have opted out of that game against Florida in 2011 and not chosen to take that as the suspension, the Luke Fickell year, there's probably, you know, they're probably playing for the national championship that year, I think.
Sure. Yeah, it would have been an undefeated matchup between Ohio State and Notre Dame. Regardless of how good Alabama was, you would think that would have been the matchup. And I think the Buckeyes would have had a really good shot of winning that game.
Oh, I think they'd have beat Notre Dame. I think they were a better team now. And that was a flawed Ohio State team, don't get me wrong.
Sure.
That 2012 team was not as good as the Ohio State teams in the future. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to say that. But, I mean, they were still better. That Notre Dame team, you know, won a lot of games that were very, you know, dicey. And, you know, obviously.
Yes. yeah, they did. Oh, my word. They had a goal line stand against Stanford that was questionable. They had an overtime game against Pitt, who wasn't that good. Yeah, they just had a string of games. They barely beat Michigan with Denard Robinson throwing 4 interceptions, and Michigan still should have beaten them. Yeah, they had a lot of games, and at least that Ohio State team had a reasonable passing game. Notre Dame couldn't throw the ball at all. Yeah, they're
yeah. Well, that Ohio State.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Mark. No, I was just going to say that Ohio State team got better as the year got along because Carlos Hyde started to develop into a really good tailback that carried over into next year. And you know, they had Braxton, like you said. They had a lot of the guys that were on the 2013 team, which was an even better team. So, yeah, I think that, no doubt, especially with the way I think they were playing better and better as the year went along, I'm pretty confident they'd beat Notre Dame. Maybe not as handily, obviously, as Alabama did, but still, I think fairly comfortably. But,
I'm right there with you.
Hey, Mark, I wanted to get to something. Your one caller, Kevin, he had brought in up the points about all-time teams.
Yep.
About doing like a list of like all-time teams.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, being the Ohio State fan that I am, I have to throw out the names. I know you threw out a few, but I mean, he mentioned he didn't know any other Ohio State offensive lineman other than Orlando Pace. I think you kind of helped him out there. I know I got more than a few names to put out there for an all-time Ohio State offensive line. I mean, you know, at tackle, you could also have Corey Stringer and Orlando Pace, the late Corey Stringer.
Yeah, I mentioned Stringer.
You know. Oh, okay. And then did you say Mangold and Charles Bentley at center?
Yep, I got both of them. You're going to definitely name some people that I didn't try to go through some exhaustive list, but I named about 8 guys.
Okay.
But go ahead.
Okay. The guards would be kind of difficult. You know, the tackles and the centers would be a lot easier. I think you mentioned the late Jim Parker, who is in both the College Football Hall of Fame and Pro Football Hall of Fame. Yep. Would be, you know, if you're talking about an all-timer, a pretty easy choice if you want to put him out there as well. Did you, by the way, get into the backs or the receivers? Or, I mean, because my backs would probably be Archie Griffith and Ezekiel Elliott. just to put it out there. Eddie George would be close, but I would probably go with Archie and Zeke would be my two choices.
Yeah,
I don't know if those were your two.
If someone is willing to discard Heisman trophies, because of course those are subjective awards, and I think I explained what great respect I have for Archie Griffin and for how kind he's been to me on a couple of occasions, that I think if you just look at pure performance and numbers, it's not difficult to put Archie Griffin in the backfield, but it's not a slam dunk by any stretch.
Well, he did have an amazing streak. What was it, 30-some straight games with 100 yards in a game, if I'm not mistaken, Mark?
Yeah, he did.
That's very impressive at the end of the day. Pretty good streak. I would also say that the tough call probably be, did you mention the wide receiver position?
No, he basically had trouble at offensive line, so I just ran through a bunch of offensive linemen. Okay. And then he did say that he proposed an Archie Griffin, Eddie George backfield, and I brought to light some of Archie's deficiencies statistically, and then also served up Ezekiel Elliott. And really, I think it stops right there. I think that's the end of the discussion. I think JK had a great career, but it was culminated in one season. So he didn't have multiple great seasons, although his 17 season was pretty remarkable.
Right, he had a good freshman year.
Yeah. So I would like to sit here. I keep saying this when it comes to old football games. I should probably try to watch one per day, like in condensed form. But to sit and watch the 1970, I believe it was the 75. Yeah, it would have been the second of the two Heisman trophies from Archie. I would want to get a better context on Pete Johnson scoring 25 touchdowns and Archie Griffin scoring 4 and winning the Heisman Trophy. That's astounding to me.
Well, Woody always wanted to give the ball to the fullback. He loved the fullback. I mean, he would always give a ball to Johnson inside the 2-yard line or short yardage.
Well, see, that's the thing, though, David. That was my first thought, too. As soon as I came across that stat, and I came across it on my own, I didn't read it somewhere. I was just looking at Ohio State football stats year to year, and all of a sudden I'm like, what? I just was blown away when I saw the Heisman Trophy winner had 4 touchdowns rushing and played in the same backfield with somebody with 25 touchdowns. So like you, my first thought was, oh, well, it's Pete Johnson. He's barreling in from the 1 and the 2-yard line constantly. But then I look a little deeper and I see Pete Johnson rushed for 1,000 yards that year.
Wow, yeah.
He ran for 1,000. I'll pull it up. Almost 1,100 yards, and Archie had 1,475. So I'm thinking,
right.
That's just crazy to me.
Well, yeah, the thing about it is, the other thing too, Mark, is Pete Johnson ended up having the better pro career.
Yeah. Yes, he did.
Yeah. Because he was the leading rusher on that 81 Bengals team that should have been playing your Cowboys in the Super Bowl, right, Mark?
My Cowboys. Did you happen to catch I don't know if you were online with us the other night. I tell you, people are surprised by that, but that was my worst moment as a sports fan, believe it or not.
Just last point on that real quick, Mark, before I let you go.
Sure.
The hidden thing, and you remember it, was the key play, even after Montana threw the touchdown. Eric Wright saved the game because Drew Pearson was going to score a touchdown.
Yeah, people forget about that. Oh, absolutely. I remember I can watch that game, and there's not a play that I don't think, okay, I remember that play. Not that I could sit here and say, this is what happened play by play by play by play. But when I watch the game, I've watched it so many times, I know every play. It's like watching an Ohio State-Michigan game from, I don't know where I would start losing track, but you know, if we picked a year in the last 40 years and started watching 35 years and started watching Ohio State Michigan games, I'm guessing that you would, not that you remember every 3-yard run, but the majority of plays would come back to you in terms of, oh yeah, I remember that play. I remember that play. That's how it is for me watching that game. And that's how it is for me watching Ohio State Michigan games, because as a collection, there has never been anything more devastating to me than losses to Michigan. As a sports fan.
No, that's true.
I was trying to explain this to my son a couple of days ago, because I'm going to break my own rule, and I'm going to bring up the NCAA basketball tournament, because my son was over here on Sunday and made mention of the great game between UCLA and Gonzaga the night before. And I said, I watched the second half and the overtime, and I was truly entertained. It was a great basketball game. And I was rooting for UCLA. I couldn't name you one player on the team. I couldn't even name you the UCLA coach, but I was just rooting for UCLA for no other reason than, to me, it just seems right for UCLA to be in the championship game. And my son can't understand that. And I said, I got nothing against Gonzaga, but I didn't grow up with Gonzaga being a basketball power. So it just feels right for UCLA to be in the championship game. Just like I would rather have seen Houston beat Baylor, because what's Baylor to me is a basketball power. Even though I know that they have been one, traditionally they're not. And Houston is more so one because of Phi Slamma Jamma. So, and Elvin Hayes before that. So he's like, Dad, you don't deal in reality. It's just like this Michigan thing you've got, where Michigan's this power and Michigan's our rival, and you know, he's like, Michigan sucks every year. He's like, they're nothing. And I said, well, and I did the quick math in my head, and I said, they beat us 17 out of 24 games between the late 70s and Jim Tressel. So that's always going to stay with me. And my most down moments as a sports fan were in front of Ohio State Michigan games in the 80s and 90s.
Well, I mean, we had a little bit better in the 80s, but I know living through it through the 90s, and especially because, as I mentioned to you last week, and mentioning the excruciating losses, it was sad, because once he kind of built up and had great teams and was still losing to teams that weren't that good from up north, especially with as great as those teams were. And I love that 95, and I love that 96 team especially. Even getting the victories today, I mean, it eases some of the pain, but those were just such great football teams. And to see them lose to just bad, mediocre teams from up there to this day, I don't know. Every time I see it, every time I hear the name Tim Biaka Batuka, Mark, it's never going to bring back good memories. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. That's what makes sports fun.
Well, as always a pleasure, Mark.
Thank you, David. Appreciate it. Have a good night.
Take care.
$1975. Archie Griffin. I'm just saying it's debatable. Archie Griffin, 1,450 yards rushing, 5.5 yards per carry, 4 touchdowns. Pete Johnson, 1,059 yards rushing, 4.7 per carry, 26 touchdowns, including 1 receiving for Pete Johnson. He caught 3 passes on the season, 1 for a touchdown. Okay, I'm going way back in history, way beyond what most of you care about. So I got to watch myself. All right, we're going to go through Phil Steele's Twitter feed. I hope he doesn't mind this. Well, it is public consumption, of course, but I'm doing this in a complimentary way, because if you missed the start of the show, I was just explaining that all of you produce the show. So all of you are the producers of the Voice of College Football call-in show, because as David just called in, he dictated the conversation. That's how I like it. I'll talk about whatever you guys want to talk about concerning college football. However, I typically like to throw out a topic. I find that it gives some focus to the show, and many of you respond to the topic, and maybe more people click on the show afterwards because we need to get some decent audience numbers after the fact. And I think more people tend to click on the call-in show if they see a topic that's under review or debate. So I saw on my Twitter feed just a few minutes before we went live, I saw a tweet from Phil Steele, who again, I acknowledge is the very best in the business. He's phenomenal. He's been on here 3 times. We hope to have him back for a 4th time this summer. And because I follow Phil Steele, he follows me. And he's been very gracious again to be on here 3 times. And also we've had a few discussions there at ESPN that I saw a tweet from him. So it caused me to click on his Twitter feed. And then I saw just all these geeky college football tweets from Phil Steele. And I thought, this is what we do here, is we just talk college football nuts and bolts all the time, even in April. So why not go through Phil Steele's Twitter feed and see what he's got? I am now going to have to find his Twitter feed. Let's see. Wish I could graphically display this. I'm going to have to figure that out. There would be a way for me on the StreamYard application I'll have to find this out, to be able to pull this up on another computer and then show it to the screen. So we'll work on that. Falcon ERX, thank you so much for the super chat contribution. Here's somebody who gets it right here, just in regards to, again, it doesn't have to be some type of large contribution, but I hope all of you just keep in mind that if everyone just a little bit, then we could keep this going. All right, Phil Steele. All right, his latest tweet. Well, Phil Steele, his latest tweet was actually a retweet of my tweet, because Phil Steele sent out a tweet and then I put best in the business, professional, thorough, and relentless. Those were the 3 terms I could come up with in a split second. To me, the guy's professional, thorough, as David Greenshield called in a few weeks ago and was touting the Phil Steele college football preview as the best. It is thorough beyond the others. And then the guy's just relentless in getting this thing out there and just gathering the information, interviewing all the head coaches in college football. And I love this one tweet that he had today, and this will capitalize why he's so good. One of the reasons why he's so good. So he retweeted my retweet of his tweet. So he had tweeted, magazine update. Goal is to finish second right through process on April 21st and begin coaches calls that day and do coaches calls through the end of May. I used to pursue coaches on here. I don't know if any of you were with me back then, but we had coaches on, I'm talking about head coaches from Oregon State, Gary Anderson, Sonny Dykes, Cal, oh my word, Scotty Montgomery at Tulsa. Anyway, South Alabama, Air Force, Coach Calhoun at Air Force. Number of fine coaches, but it's just so labor intensive. You've got to go through so many histrionics to try to pull in a major college football coach. It's just was not worth it. Anyway, Phil Steele tweets, goal is to finish second right through process on April 21st and begin coaches calls that day and do coaches calls through the end of May. Magazine final page to press June 15th and start shipping pre-orders on June 23rd. So you have them by July 4th. He also tweeted, magazine update. I won't take you through another magazine update, but at the beginning of the magazine update, just finished watching Oregon at Washington State from November 14th. So Phil Steele in April is watching the Oregon State Washington State game. I love that. Solid call by Tim Brando and Spencer Tillman. And then he goes back to his magazine update. Okay, Phil Steele a few days ago. You can follow along with this on Twitter as well. Phil Steele posted the 2021 toughest opponent win percentages. So basically the toughest schedules in the country if you go strictly by win percentage from the previous season. The toughest schedule in the country belongs to UMass at 65.9% winning percentage by their opponents. Number 2, Arkansas, which is not surprising considering they play the SEC Western Division. And they also play Texas this year. Navy's number 3. Now, of course, it has to be taken into consideration. Are you playing tough winning percentages from Group of 5 teams or from Power 5 teams? Number 4 is Akron. 5 is USF, South Florida. Number 6 is Arizona. Number 7 is USC. That's surprising right there. Arizona has the 6th. Now, see, that has to be taken into consideration as well, because when you're talking about the Pac-12 in 2020, we're talking about a truncated schedule beyond belief. All right. So Arizona and USC ranking 6th and 7th doesn't mean a whole lot to me in 2021 because of the 2020 season that was compromised. Miami of Ohio, Tulane, Florida State. I have said this the entire offseason that Florida State and Mike Norvell have a difficult schedule. Big challenge there. Georgia Tech's at number 11 and Nebraska is number 12. Nebraska, yes, plays Oklahoma. They play Ohio State, and they play one of the other big hitters. I think 2 of their 3 games from the Big Ten Eastern Division are difficult. Ohio State and possibly Penn State. All right. Why did I just lose my Phil Steele feed? Huh? It's okay. Let's get back to, let's see if there's anything else. Anything else college football nerdy and geeky from Phil Steele, which we love. Oh, I thought this was interesting as well, because these are 2 of my favorite people in the business, that Phil Steele was tweeting about Rick Saratella, who's, of course, our friend from the NFL Draft Bible, who we should be having on this week. So every April, we are blessed to have Rick Saratella from the NFL Draft Bible on for a position breakdown of every position in the NFL draft. I mean, an extensive, comprehensive position by position. And I will, and Rick's been so kind to get me a copy of his NFL Draft Bible. Last year should be around here somewhere. Anyway, so I thought it was funny to see that Phil was reaching out to Rick Saratella. Thanks for the NFL Draft Bible. Hope to meet up with you while you're in Cleveland for the draft this month. The draft's in Cleveland. Huh. I didn't know that. So we've got here Phil Steele, the AP top 10 for 2021 projected 6 months in advance. 95.8% over 12 years. So what Phil Steele is telling us is that over the last 12 years, he has been able to nail 95.8% of the preseason top 10 poll. I've got to admit, and I'm just being honest here, I don't know what that's really worth, but it's impressive that he's able to forecast who's going to be in the AP preseason top 10. So this year, Phil Steele's, not his top 10, but his projected AP preseason top 10. So he's predicting what the AP is going to select for its top 10. Is Alabama number 1, Clemson 2, Georgia 3, Oklahoma 4, Ohio State 5, Texas A&M 6, Notre Dame 7, North Carolina 8, Iowa State 9, and Cincinnati 10. Trying to think what my top 10 looked like. Georgia 1, Alabama 2, Clemson 3, Oklahoma 4, Ohio State 5, Texas A&M 6, Iowa State 7, North Carolina 8, Notre Dame 9, and no, I think I had Oregon 9 and Notre Dame 10, I believe. And a number of magazine updates from Phil Steele. Oh, this is really cool. So whomever Sam Snyder is, big Phil Steele fan, it's pretty obvious. He has all of his Phil Steele magazines going back to 1995, it appears. Has them all stacked up there. And tweeted that out. I wish I would have kept mine. I did for years and years and years, but I have been on a bit of a purge recently. Magazine update by Phil Steele on March 28th. Just finished watching Mississippi State Ole Miss Egg Bowl. Solid call by Tom Hart. Must be Jordan Rogers and Cole Kubelik. That's great. Michael Ray guy. I haven't seen that name in forever. All right, good stuff. Good stuff. We are at 860-499-3332. Anything on your mind concerning college football? Or, of course, we will talk March Madness and the NCAA basketball championship game tonight. All right. The Rod Farva, Carlos Hyde's performance in the 2013 Michigan game is overlooked. I can't really say that I remember much about Hyde's performance in that game, but he had a great season, that's for sure. The game in which Carlos Hyde had a touchdown against Iowa that season, in which he was basically knocked backwards and he was running. He took him like 3 steps to figure out where he was and turn around and run the right way. The Rod Farva chiming in with Rob Sims at guard for Ohio State. Started off as a tackle, then moved inside. Yes. Lewis Papp. Archie Griffin only rushed for 2,800 yards in the NFL. Actually, Archie Griffin, I hate to bring this to light, but in thinking of his NFL career, the first memory that came to mind was him muffing a kickoff in the Super Bowl in the 1982 Super Bowl for the 81 championship the Cincinnati-San Francisco game, he muffed a kick that turned into a San Francisco touchdown or field goal. Because the Niners led that game 20-0 before Cincinnati came back and made it a game. Great goal line stand in Super Bowl history there. Cheryl with a number of Ohio State great references, Keith Byers and Rex Kern. I'm going to let everyone know, David had brought up all-time teams at Ohio State, and Kevin had called us a couple of weeks ago about all-time teams at Alabama, and then just taking that theme to many of the major teams, and it's given me some ideas on what we're going to do, but I won't announce that yet because I'm not quite sure how we'll execute that, but I want to get all of you involved in helping us select the all-time team at every major school, or for however many schools we can get to. So I'm going to get all of you involved to be able to make your vote count. Lisa says, yes, I also had to unfortunately go through the 90s as a Buckeye when Ohio State was regularly losing to Michigan, and their fans' school would brag and run their mouths about how Ohio State lost. I know it. I know it. I remember it myself. What was really cool back in grade school, junior high, and high school, living where I did there in the Buckeye State, is that on the Friday prior to the Ohio State-Michigan game, that would be a tradition at our schools there in Stowe, Ohio, is everyone, just about everyone, not that everyone had to, and some people didn't care, of course, but I would say the great majority of people wore their Ohio State or Michigan gear to school the Friday before the big game, the game. And so that was always fun. And it always disgusted me to see maize and blue in my school in Ohio. Always thought that was despicable. Nate's in the house. King Aladdin. Joey. Good to see you, Joey. we got Mayberry mixed in with Columbus and the Andy Griffith show. Archie Griffin, Andy Griffith. Great show too, but I'm really into the Westerns right now because they just run them all day on the certain channel. It never ends. Some gun smoke for you, George. Maverick. All right. Bonanza. Big Valley. Yes, Barry Alvarez has retired. D-Rock Irish. Phil Steele can thank me for suggesting him there. Over 200 yards in that game for Carlos Hyde. Man, how could I spin that into a video? I think of this every off season that I would want to watch some college football games from the previous season. I want to watch two sets of college football games, basically classic college football games. So the 2013 Ohio State-Michigan game, for example, and then also do a scouting report on last season's games and what players are coming back and how well they played. Take guys like JT Daniels and really review his pass by pass performance through the 4 or 5 games he played. But I don't really know how to do that. Can somebody answer me this? Does anybody know the video rights of college football and the NFL on YouTube? Because I keep hearing that. So, for example, about 5 years ago, I was doing a Wednesday night call-in show that I was calling College Football Coast to Coast. And it was being directed by somebody remotely, and he could do all sorts of fancy things. And he worked with me at ESPN, and he was launching his business at the time and just wanted to kind of use me as a guinea pig. And I was happy to serve that role because he was helping me build the channel. So for about 15 weeks, he produced and directed a call-in show for me on Wednesday nights. And he wanted to show me that he could show highlights. And so I was talking about North Carolina and Pitt or somebody in the ACC, and we pulled some highlights, and we pulled them from not the current ESPN ACC network. We pulled them from some kind of ACC YouTube digital network, and it immediately got flagged. At the same time, I see all sorts of folks showing college football highlights on YouTube and not getting flagged. I even saw a channel the other day. My son was showing me that somebody was doing a breakdown from last year's Super Bowl and showing all those NFL highlights from the Super Bowl. And I'm like, okay, I need to really look into this because I could improve my videos 200 or 300%. Not that you certainly don't want to see me. I'm sure that's one of the great attractions to these videos is staring at me for 22 minutes. But that I could really class up the videos by including college football highlights. So any YouTube experts out there, please let me know. Actually, yes, please let me know. Although I just thought of a source that might be able to help me as well. I did. I'm paying for it, so I might as well use it. Okay. Oh, and again, I think I've got a great idea for our selection of all-time teams. I also need to be thinking, this is the time of the year that I really need to prepare myself for the next season and get ahead of these things, because the other thing that I'd like to do is kind of figure out some type of a fantasy football league. Who wants to head that up for me? Does anybody have any interest in doing a college football fantasy league? I'll have to figure out how to do that. Cheryl was in a motel, Red Roof Inn, with a flu watching that Super Bowl game in 1982. Cheryl, what an awful, awful memory. I was at my grandma's house and wishing the Cowboys were playing because they should have been. And actually, David, if you're still on the line, I was going to mention, after you had brought up the Eric Wright game-saving tackle against Drew Pearson at midfield after the Montana to Clark pass, which Danny White completed like a 35-yard ball down the seam, and Drew Pearson caught it at midfield, and he ran to about the San Francisco 40 or 45, and the Cowboys only needed one more decent play to get into field goal range to win the game, and then Danny White fumbled on a sack the next play. Anyway, the series prior to the drive, that led to the catch. The 89-yard 13-play San Francisco drive in the final 5 minutes. There was a 3rd and 6, something in that range. And Doug Donnelly was open. Danny White, I don't know whether to blame White or blame Donnelly. It wasn't the best pass in the world. It should have been a better pass, but it could have been caught. Got his hands on it. One of those deals. So, or Dallas would have converted, and probably they were up 27-21. I'd have to look at that again because they punted the ball down to the 11. I think they would have been in field goal range if they would have converted that to go up 30-21 and pretty much game over. Why do I think of these things? It just makes me sick. All right. David, Ohio State does have remarkable uniforms. I've always loved the Buckeyes uniforms. Jim Otis, Allen, adding to our list of Ohio State running backs. Jim Otis, John Brockington, Tim Spencer, Calvin Murray, Pete Johnson, Archie Griffin, Tom Maddie, Carlos Hyde, Carlos Snow, Raymond Harris, Pepe Pearson, if we really want to drop down the list. Vince Workman, Keith Byers, Vaughn Broadnax, Butler Binote, Rod Smith, Robert Smith, Dante Hall, and on and on and on and on. Maurice Hall, Lydell Ross. Okay. Falcon ERX is asking us, what coach on the hot seat benefited the most from the COVID season? Jim Harbaugh. Well, I think that question could be taken a number of ways. I can't really think of that many coaches who had a season in which they could have been fired for that weren't. Most of the downtrodden teams in the Pac-12 had decent seasons, like Colorado. And James Franklin was not on the hot seat. You could possibly say Jeremy Pruitt because he was fired for other reasons and probably would have stuck around. Derod Farva mentions a bit of important news for the Georgia Bulldogs today that we covered and posted on our SEC channel, that West Virginia safety Tyke Smith has transferred to Georgia. So Georgia lost a plethora of secondary talent, including Tyreek Stevenson transferring to Miami. Tyson Campbell's gone. DJ Daniels gone. Richard LeCount and others. Mark Webb gone in the secondary. So they're missing 6 secondary players that were integral to their 2020 team. And so this is a huge addition because Tyke Smith is a player. He had 63 tackles last year. He had 2 picks. He was a third-team All-America for a West Virginia pass defense that ranked statistically, I'm not saying they had the best pass defense in the nation, statistically, the number 1 pass defense in the nation. So, yeah, that's a big pickup. I wanted to address that. Justin Fuente, that's a good call there by Jobo. Justin Fuente, my goodness, he needs to really rally and have a decent season, because his first 2 years in Blacksburg were fine at 10-4 and 9-4, and an ACC championship game appearance in 2016-17. So his first 2 years, 16 and 17. Since the first few games of 18, I think I ran the numbers the other day, 15 and 17. 15 and 17 at Virginia Tech in the last 32 games. There's the Carlos Hyde line from the 2013 Michigan game, 226 yards on 27 carries with a score. Cheryl, did not Keith Byers run for over 200 yards? Eddie George, 200 yards more? Keith Byers, his big season of 1984, I'm trying to think of what the number was. I think it was 1784 were his rushing totals in 1984. Byers for 1784, and that was in 12 games. Eddie George in 1995 ran for 1934. I think that was the number, 1934 in 13 games. One more game, and he ran for about, like you say, close to 200 yards more, but he did play one additional game. Nikki Sualua, good call, went on to the Dallas Cowboys. Pete Digits, Mark is the 411 of college football. Appreciate that. Beanie Wells. Robert Smith's NFL career, had he not decided to retire prematurely, he was in his prime. Look at the, let's see, he played in that 98 championship game against the Falcons. He then played in 99, I believe, and I think his last game might have been the 2000 NFC championship game against the Giants. Maybe he didn't even make it that long, but Robert Smith was on a Hall of Fame pace. He has not earned a Hall of Fame spot, but in terms of the pace he was on, it was Hall of Fame worthy. Let's see here. Okay, here we go. His first 2 seasons, he didn't do much. Then in 95, he ran for 632 and 5 touchdowns. Then he ran for 692 and 3 touchdowns. Okay, then he went on a 4-year run where Robert Smith ran for 1266, 1187, 1015, and 1521. His final season was his best season by far, 1,521 yards. And he ran for 32 touchdowns in his career. And he caught some passes, 178 passes with 6 touchdowns. So he scored 38 touchdowns, and he ran for almost 7,000 yards. So he was a ways away, but still had 4 stellar seasons in a row. Whereas yards per carry was 5.5, 4.8, 4.6, and 5.2. David Knight, is Michael Thomas the best wide receiver ever from Ohio State? I'm going to say yes. So historically, the best would be pre-1985 would be Paul Warfield, who's a Pro Football Hall of Famer, all-time great, Miami Dolphins, Cleveland Browns. Okay. Different era, different productivity level, but still Paul Warfield is Paul Warfield. And if you don't know who Paul Warfield is, look him up. He's one of the greatest, again, pre-passing era wide receivers of all time. Then you got Chris Carter, who I would say from the standpoint of an NFL career had the greatest NFL career. I don't even think it's close. Yeah, nobody's in Chris Carter's realm as an NFL player at wide receiver. Jeff Graham had some really good seasons with the Bears. David Boston had some really big seasons with the Cardinals. Of course, Antonio Holmes won a Super Bowl MVP and was very productive with the Steelers, but nobody came close to Chris Carter. Chris Carter is one of the top 5 to 10 wide receivers in the history of the NFL. However, Michael Thomas is on his way. Michael Thomas is the most prolific wide receiver. Most of you have probably caught some of these numbers that he's putting down. He just set an all-time record for receptions in a season 2 years ago. What did he catch? 147 passes or something, 153 passes in 1 year. Every couple games, he breaks some other record in terms of productivity at the start of a career. So right now, Chris Carter is the greatest receiver in the history of Ohio State football on an NFL level, but Michael Thomas is eclipsing him quickly. At the collegiate level, David Boston probably had the most productive career. Michael Jenkins is up there. Santonio Holmes is up there. Teddy Ginn is up there. Michael Thomas is not up there. He had one nice season in 2014. Michael Thomas was a late bloomer at Ohio State. Alan, thank you so much. I left that place in October, so unless they would pay me 7 figures, I have no real interest in that. But I appreciate it. We get to do what we want to do here. Although there's the certain pitfalls of trying to build a business. Yes, Cheryl, Robert Smith was studying to be a doctor. Terry Glenn. Now, Terry Glenn arguably had the best one season at Ohio State for a wide receiver in 1995. He caught, well, he just had a ridiculous year. Excuse me. He had 90 some catches for 1,400 yards. Joey Galloway. Yeah, Galloway. My goodness, Galloway was just phenomenal in regards to the length of his NFL career and that he remained fast that entire time. He was like 35 years old, 37 years old, and he could still run like the wind, much like Teddy Ginn after him. Like Teddy Ginn right now is still playing in the NFL. At least he did in 2019. I don't know if he did this past season, but still, he was still active 2 years ago and still, he left Ohio State in 2006. So 2007 would have been his first NFL season. So 2020 would have been his 14th season in the NFL, and he's still outrunning guys. Cheryl, of course, is talking about Mike Tomczak playing for the Bears. It's a sad state of affairs for Ohio State at quarterback in the NFL. It's awful Name me the best Ohio State quarterback ever in the NFL, and there hasn't been one. There hasn't been one who's been good. Mike Tomczak might have had the best career. Man, that's hard to. Terrell Pryor had the best career if you take in his receiving numbers, but my goodness. Ohio State's quarterbacks going in reverse. We're going to see about Justin Fields. He's got certainly the opportunity to be the greatest Ohio State quarterback ever at the NFL level, and that's not going to be saying much. Dwayne Haskins has been a bust thus far. JT Barrett never made it in the NFL. He's been on the practice squad for the Pittsburgh Steelers and the New Orleans Saints. Braxton Miller, a receiver in the NFL with the Houston Texans. Todd Beckman, forget it. Terrell Pryor, forget it. Played some with the Raiders at quarterback. Was basically a quarterback for the Raiders, given a bit of a chance there, and ran around and made some plays, but nothing. It was unfortunate that Troy Smith was lightly regarded as a next-level prospect, but he did get a chance with Baltimore and San Francisco in particular. And look up, I still remember watching this game. This must have been about 2000, probably 9 or 10. The Troy Smith, it was a late season game, meaningless game between a bad San Francisco team and a bad St. Louis Rams team. So this must have been pre-Harbaugh because they were bad. This was before San Francisco was good. This might have been like 2009. And Troy Smith had a great game against the Rams. He threw for like 320 yards. He ran for it was almost like an 2004 Michigan game. And it was the last game of the season. I'm going to look him up. I want to see the numbers on this game. And I thought maybe Troy Smith's going to turn into something at the NFL level. I didn't expect him to turn into Drew Brees, but I meant that maybe he will play and be able to do something. He started 8 games and he went 4-4. So let me find this. I'm guessing this was in 2009. No. 2010. So he plays this ridiculous game. They pull out an overtime game against the Rams. Meaningless game. But I'm thinking Troy Smith might have something going here, and I sure hope he does. And then somebody might be able to fill me in on what he contracted the next offseason. He had some kind of horrible incident with a sickness, and he just was never the same. Where's this? Oh, there's this game. Okay, so he actually played 3 more games as a starting quarterback after this. This is in 2010. San Francisco, St. Louis, 49ers won with Troy Smith as the starting quarterback, 23-20. He went 17 for 28 for 356 yards and a touchdown, and he ran for 33. And he ran for He ran, for 45 other yards and Anyway, he had a 356-yard game through the air against the Rams. And then he played 4 more games, and they were pretty marginal. He had 3 touchdowns and 4 picks, and that was the end of his career. So Troy Smith, Craig Krenzel, surprisingly, I was shocked that Craig Krenzel even started games in the NFL with the Bears. That's crazy to think about because he was not good enough to be a starting quarterback in the NFL, and he actually was. I knew somebody was going to bring up Joe Burrow. Doesn't count. Krenzel with the Bears and the Giants. Then you had Joe Germain, who, I'm skipping a decade. Hang on. No, not really. Steve Belisari never touched the NFL. He would have made it more as a safety. Joe Germain played a little bit with the Bengals. I doubt if he threw more than 20 passes in his career. There you go. Thank you, Lewis. Appreciate that for either knowing that or looking that up about Troy Smith. Lemire's, is that how you pronounce that? Syndrome for Troy Smith. That's unfortunate. Joe Germain, Bobby Hoying. Bobby Hoying might have had the best NFL career for an Ohio State quarterback, and that was not good. Bobby Hoying may have played, I can almost say for sure, played the most meaningful minutes for an Ohio State quarterback in the NFL, because Bobby Hoying relieved Rich Gannon in the 2000 AFC Championship game against the Baltimore Ravens. Ravens in Oakland. And Rich Gannon got knocked out of the game against that all-time great Ravens defense. And Bobby Hoying, unfortunately for him, drew that assignment as the backup quarterback and came in, and it was just, yeah, he couldn't do anything. Nobody could do anything against that Ravens defense. They lost, what was the final score of that game? Like 19-3. Yeah. So Bobby Hoying, we will give him kudos as the Ohio State quarterback who played the most meaningful minutes in the NFL. Mike Tomczak might be second. I think Mike Tomczak started at least one NFL playoff game for the Bears. Maybe two. 87, 88. Mike Tomczak always had one of those names that nobody could spell. There we go. Fortunately, that filled that in for me. I can get that to Mike Tomczak. So he played a long time. Now, there's your best Ohio State starting quarterback ever in the NFL. Went 42-31. He had 73 starts in the NFL. 42-31. Mike Tomczak? Wait a minute. Yeah, Mike Tomczak. Man, I don't remember him starting this many games. Went 10-5 for the Steelers in 96. He's with the Browns, with the Packers, yeah. Okay, the 87 Bears, he went 4-2, and the 88 Bears, he went 4-1. Now, I had thought he had played their playoff games that year, especially in 87. Where's the game log? Isn't this the most intriguing sports call-in show you've ever seen? I guess we've got somebody on the line. We'll take a call here. I apologize. I lost track of our call-in portion of this. Somebody calling in about Ohio State quarterbacks. Fortunately, you've been able to listen to the show while on hold. Welcome to the Voice of College Football.
Hey, Mark, it's Dave.
Oh, hey, Dave. How you doing?
I'm fine. Yourself?
How long did I make you wait?
About 10 minutes.
I'm sorry. I had that window closed and I got caught up in reminiscing.
Look, it's all good. I still was listening. Hey, I want to draw a parallel, and you can tell me if it's accurate or not. If you think like in the mid-2000s when USC really had dominant offensive lines, really good skilled players, wide receivers, running backs, and their quarterbacks would go into the NFL, and then they didn't fare so well. But I think that they were so comfortable around their teammates because they knew that their teammates were going to play at a high level. Do you think the same thing happened to, say, the Ohio State quarterbacks, where Ohio State, awesome offensive line, awesome running backs, awesome wide receivers, you know, where they're like, hey, you know what? You can throw anything at us, and we're going to take care of it. Do you think they get to a point where you can't beat us, but then once they go to the NFL, you're not dealing with the same stack of cards? I mean, what do you think?
I think there's merit in what you have to say. Matt Leinart comes to mind because I did not think that Matt Leinart was going to succeed in the NFL because I didn't really see anything special about him at the collegiate level. I thought he was good. I don't want to disparage him in any way, shape, or form. He was capable and he was really good at the collegiate level, but it just seemed like he had all day to survey the field and he had an unfair advantage in terms of skill position players that you're talking about versus their opponents. And he wouldn't have that stacked deck, as you put it, at the next level. The one thing I will say, though, about Ohio State quarterbacks is there has not been a highly touted one since Art Schlechter. And you have to go back to 1982. That was 40 years ago. So it's not like they've rolled out a bunch of highly touted quarterbacks and they flopped. Dwayne Haskins would be the only one that was supposed to do well, and the jury's still out. He's only been in the league 2 years, but he's not off to a good start, and he's been traded. So he's the only one that's been a first-round pick. The rest of these guys have been journeymen and were not expected to be big-time players. So it's not like they did not fulfill their potential. They were not supposed to be anything.
Okay, I got you. And you know what? I thought the same thing about Leinart. Like, I never thought he was going to materialize, and he didn't. But if you think about some of the Ohio State quarterbacks, I thought they were going to be. I thought they would show up, and I think Dwayne Haskins still has an opportunity to show himself. He's obviously a good passer. I think he just has got to focus on football and keep some of the off-field distractions away from himself.
Oh, absolutely.
But I mean, I guess the real thing, Mark, I was thinking about is like you guys at Ohio State have had a lot of good quarterbacks year in and year out. I mean, there's never a drop off in talent, at least from my view. And maybe I'm not even like talking about, you know, whether they go to the NFL and succeed, but I mean, if I were you, I'd be pretty happy with the quarterback play, you know, at Ohio State for the last 5 or 6 years.
Oh, absolutely. The quarterback play at Ohio State has been exceptional since the early 2000s at the college level.
I mean, definitely. I mean, yeah, definitely. And I kind of agree with you on Art Schlechter that, I mean, let's say remove the gambling issues. He was a really good quarterback.
He was the 4th player taken in the draft.
Yeah, dude, he was a good quarterback. And I don't know. I think that's the only thing I wanted to talk about. It's just I just kept thinking, like, you know what? If you look at, like, Mark, let's talk about Ohio State's offensive line, the running backs, the wide receivers, and, you know, obviously you got to segue the defense into that because the defense helps keep the other team's offense off the field. So you're talking about like a combined, it's all integral, right? And I think that, man, Ohio State really, say, in the last 15 to 20 years, in my mind, is a juggernaut, but a couple years there were some hiccups. Am I wrong?
The hiccups were when?
I said in a couple years. But what I'm saying, Mark, is if you look at it from, like, say, 2000 to now, that's 20 years. That's a 20-year span. There was just a few hiccups here and there.
Well, sure. If you're just looking at consistent winning from 2000 till now. So we're looking at this century. Ohio State is the best record in college football this century, unless you're going to include Boise State, and that's a whole different level of football. So I don't think we're really considering Boise State.
No.
But Ohio State they've consistently won more than any other school. Of course, since Nick Saban took over, Alabama's been the best program since 07, 08. But taking the entire century, Ohio State has been.
And I'm looking at Lisa Sims' comments. She's right. I don't think Dwayne Haskins ever stood a chance at Washington. I don't have any faith in Washington to be a successful NFL football team, but I mean, he also did some things to kind of counterbalance what he should have been doing. But anyway, that's irrelevant, and that's all I was trying to get your take on, Mark, was that I always felt like Ohio State, as an offensive football team, they had what they needed to have. Talented skill players, talented running backs, talented offensive lines, talented quarterbacks. And I'm thinking, like, you're going to challenge Alabama this year. And I wish my team would, but I just don't have that confidence. But I'll be rooting for you, okay?
All right, David, we can take all the support we can get here.
Okay, take care of yourself, bro.
Appreciate it. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
All right. I believe we have hit the bewitching hour. What do you think? Been on here for pushing 2 hours. Appreciate everybody's comments in the live chat. Certainly want to remind everyone that you can contribute at Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App. Just search Mark Rogers TV at Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App. Let's see, coming up tomorrow. I've got a full day tomorrow. You're not necessarily going to see it here live, but I've got all sorts of records lined up with Michigan. And oh my goodness, who else? Arkansas, Virginia Tech. Oh, Nebraska. We're going to do some Nebraska live tomorrow. Yes. So be looking out for that. Some Nebraska football live at 8 Eastern. And we're also taping a segment that you folks don't know about yet. And until I get everything pulled together, I'm not going to announce that yet. So we'll have to get that pulled together for all of you. I don't want to say anything about it right now because a lot of things need to come together before we can release that content. All right. So a lot of good stuff in store. Shop Amazon. Use the link in the description section of any of the videos, including this one. Please, when you shop Amazon, think the voice of college football. Amazon, voice of college football. Voice of college football, Amazon. Actually, when you think voice of college football, you don't have to think Amazon. But when you think Amazon, you have to think voice of college football. So if you can keep that straight, when you think Amazon, like I got to shop, I got to go on Amazon, do some shopping, think voice of college football. Amazon, voice of college football. And then you grab the link because you've saved it somewhere. And then boom, you use that link to shop on Amazon. It's the same shopping experience. And bam, you help us build the channel. I saw a YouTuber the other day, and the Rod Farva, I'm going to get to your comment in just a second. I saw a YouTuber the other day who showed where his first Amazon check was for $2.12. And he was out of his mind, ecstatic to be able to earn $2.12 from his Amazon affiliate link. His last monthly check from Amazon, his last one, was $34,000 for 1 month. Now mine, I'm way ahead of him because he started at $2 from Amazon in 1 month, and he made it up to $34,000. And that's only one of like 40 places in which he earns revenue from. And my last Amazon check was about $20 for last month. So, and then considering how much work I put into the Amazon link, I'm making pennies per hour, doing real well. All right. So the Rod Farva was in here with something. Yeah, Cedric Anderson. Remember him well. Number 22, I believe. 22? Yeah. Cedric Anderson. In regards to Ohio State wide receivers, he averaged 21 yards per catch in his career with 80 career catches. Yeah. And back then, that was in the early 80s. Cedric Anderson caught all of his throws from Art Schlechter and Mike Tomczak. All right. It was great to see everybody in here. Cheryl, of course, our moderator, who holds the whole show up on her shoulders all by herself. King Aladdin, George, the Rod Farva, Ricardo, great to see you. Lisa Sims, thank you for joining tonight. Lewis, of course, you know I love you and appreciate you retweeting everything on YouTube. Thank you so much for that, or on Twitter. Mike Williams, thank you so much for your support. I hope you guys know I appreciate it. Got 78 Swilly. 78 Swilly. You know what's coming? Welcome to the Voice of College Football. Unfortunately, we've got this mic set up now where I can't really follow through. I can't give you the full wind up and follow through, but hope you enjoyed that 78 Swilly. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. Would love to know who you root for and how long you've been watching. Joey and others, again, Roger Smith, thank you so much for watching tonight. We'll be back tomorrow night, I believe. We've scheduled an 8 o'clock live stream for tomorrow night talking Nebraska football. 8 o'clock, I believe it is. 8? That sounds right. 8 o'clock, Nebraska football tomorrow night. Good stuff. And then Wednesday, of course, we've got our big Ohio State, Florida State, and call-in show day as well. Right here at the Voice of College Football. Please contribute to Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App. Just search MarkRogersTV and get yourself a free mask. Free mask at voiceofcollegefootball.com. I'm going to send all of you like all these links you need to know. Voiceofcollegefootball.com, Amazon link. Really, those two I'm good with. Voiceofcollegefootball.com. Even if you don't want a mask, check out what we've got going there. And we have just launched. But we're off to a good start at our website, voiceofcollegefootball.com. And we've got a lot of other stuff in mind. Fantasy football, predictions, all-time teams. I've got my wheels spinning on what we can do there. So please lock it in. Register for free up at the top. Just click on a register for free. And we'll get you a coupon code to get a free mask and 20% off your first purchase. And in the running for a $25 gift card. All right. See y'all on Tuesday. Tuesday night, Nebraska. Go Huskers, GBR.